Hi everyone, you are Reddit expose there, enjoy watching.
We met in December, not romantically, but in a very Washington way, at a grocery box distribution in the basement of a church on 16th Street. I helped the local mutual aid on Saturdays. I carried boxes, printed ads on a printer at home so that don't swear in the chat, but put up a sign. She ticked off the lists and managed to talk to everyone who came. I'm Maya, she introduced herself, taking off her glove. If someone doesn't have enough milk, I have a car, we'll drive to Giant. I reply, I'm Nikita. I only have a bike, but I have zip ties and duct tape. That's how we came together on screeds and lists. Maya was an investigative assistant in the office of the public defender. Witnesses, entrances, cameras, reports until the night. I fixed the network and projectors in a small museum near U Street and worked part-time in the evening space at rehearsals wires in the afternoon. Quiet, please, in the evening. We lived at opposite ends of the Green Line. I lived in Petworth, she lived in Columbia Heights. We started with simple urban routes, a Sunday market at DuPont Circle, a Capital bike share rental along the river, noodles at a tiny eatery on H Street, where the waiter knows what is spicy but human. The first 6 months were like a well-chosen backpack. It's heavy, but it doesn't hurt your shoulders. She taught me how to order coffee without further ado, and I taught her how to screw the right anchors into the drywall. On weekdays, we did 2 intersections, breakfast at 7 when she returned from a night out, and a late dinner when I came in after installing the lights. There was a piece of paper on the refrigerator. To the cat in the morning. Plants are on Wednesdays. We're at least 20 minutes away today. The problems came not because of the characters, but because of the rhythm. Her business became more difficult, and she brought home silence that could not be filled with conversations. I brought burning letters home. I need it by morning, and the desire to fix everything is in people too. We started saying later more often. Then we'll go to the ocean. Then we'll change the mattress. Then we'll visit my friends in Silver Spring. The afterwards in this city can last indefinitely. In the spring, May received a letter, a 1-year internship in San Diego at a human rights organization. Not forever, she said, looking at the map, but not to blocks either. We compiled a table of pros and cons in Google Docs, calculated budgets, and I even tried on a remote control at the museum. In the 3rd week, I realized that I wasn't counting money, but distance. Said it out loud. I'm not ready to drag my life there. I'm not ready to ask you to stay either. She nodded. I'm more afraid of getting stuck than of leaving. We hugged each other without the theater and agreed, let's not be heroic. If it gets hard, call earlier. We said goodbye at Reagan National, amid the usual morning rush. I was holding her suitcase. She was holding my gaze. You're good, Maya said. We just have different sneakers. I joked about at least my insole doesn't squeak, but it was empty and quiet inside. On the way back, the subway announced the stations in its casual tone. And for the first time, I liked this routine. The first months after that are like living in a museum of your own apartment. I moved the table to a sunny wall, finally fixed the normal hooks in the hallway, replaced the cold lamps with warm ones. I signed up for therapy, Whitman Walker on a sliding scale, and once every 2 weeks I said out loud what I usually swallowed, that caring was often confused with control, and that I can handle it sometimes meant I'm scared. The therapist asked, what do you do when you don't know what to do? I reply, I'm opening Trello. Together we made a list where Trello wasn't. A jog in Meridian Hill Park, a call to mom on Tuesdays, don't answer after 8. I returned to volunteering, but in a different way. Not to save, but to support. I made a bilingual memo for our entrance, how to complain to HPD and 311 if there is no heating. Short phrases, a checklist, and phone numbers. He hung a transparent pocket above the mailboxes. If you don't have any quarters, take them. If you don't have any, leave them. A week later, there was a roll with a blue elastic band and a note in a child's handwriting. Return 3. Found. This handwriting cured me better than many conversations. Maya and I corresponded rarely and correctly. Did the documents arrive? Did the package arrive? One day she sent a photo of the ocean and the inscription, the water is nosy like a subway, but without a schedule. I replied with a picture of the evening window on Georgia Avenue, and we have nose too, but the batteries. And everything. When she flew in at the end of the summer to close the vault for a couple of days, we met in a small coffee shop near the Historical Society. 15 minutes about her business, 10 about my silent screenings at the museum, where we did sessions once a month without loud noises and flashes for neighbors with hypersensitivity. At parting, she said, "You've become simpler." I reply, "You too." And it wasn't about worse, better, but about the air. Life began to consist of small but resilient things. I introduced a quiet half hour. On Fridays I turned everything off and just sat by the window with tea. At work, I wrote human error texts on the museum's website. Not error 500, but we broke it. Try it later, we're already fixing it. To super and I hung a door closer in the entrance so that the door wouldn't slam. And the neighbor from above brought cookies for silence for the first time in a year. Once a month in the library on the 14th, we assembled Fix It together. Someone brought a squeaky stool, someone brought a radio. I came with my own set of bits and Teflon tape. They didn't leave as friends, but as neighbors. In the fall, I met Hannah. Not a replacement, just a person with whom the pace coincided. She makes sound at small venues near the Navy Yard. Cables, ear monitors, a night where you need to take care of your back and ears. We agreed from the first evening. I help carry the racks, but I don't guide her. She doesn't take offense at my half hour of silence on Fridays. They started making soup on Sundays together, not because it was a tradition, but because it was a universal response to too many weeks. Sometimes the city returned me as news, not as a wound. I saw her name on the list of thanks from the Human Rights Report. Someone from the General wrote, "I saw you in stories by the ocean." I put the heart on and went to check if the router in the museum was blinking. One day, we bumped into each other at Union Market. She with a bag, I with a bunch of herbs and salt. They waved without coming up. This gesture was enough for me, like the marks on a map. We were here. In winter, we were blown away by snow again and the lights were turned off for a block. I opened the common room in the basement, put the kettle on an extension cord, and stuck on the charge phones for 15 minutes sheet. The neighbors brought flashlights, someone brought cookies, and I found myself calm. This is the case when we are not made of big words, but of sockets and boiling water. Hannah came in for a minute before the sound check, left the thermos, the hot stuff is on the table, and she ran on. I stuck a small paper clip under the sheet, a funny symbol that things and people hold together better when they're not held together tightly. I marked the year after the breakup, not with a date, but with a feeling. I stopped reflexively writing, "Are you okay?" at late hours and learned to tell myself enough is enough. Not less feelings, but more limits. I now have 2700K warm lamps in my apartment, a normal humidifier, and 3 stickers on the refrigerator. Fields plant. Tuesday, after 20 o'clock. Offline. Call earlier. Don't be a hero alone. On the common table near the mailboxes there are hexagons, a screwdriver and short notice cards. I'll take a drill for the evening. I lost the key to the basement. I found it. If this story needs a moral, it's boring and honest. Love can be good and still end. The city doesn't change from our dramas, but it becomes more tolerant from our little things, from the door closer, from the quiet screenings, from the bilingual memo at the elevator, from the fact that you don't act as a hero alone, but write in advance. Sometimes we meet at the coffee counter and wave, each in his own schedule line. Sometimes I come home, put the soup on. The cat yes, now I have mint curls up on the windowsill, the door closes softly, as it should. And I quietly, without pathos, tell myself what has been holding me for years, I'm here. And that's enough to do the little things that make up the house again tomorrow. In the spring, the city suddenly pretended to be calm. 3 days without rain, garbage trucks on schedule. The elevator in the house did not get stuck for a whole week. I walked back from work for 20 minutes, not acting heroic, without music, just listening to the tires rustle on the asphalt. At home, the door closed softly. I finally adjusted the door closer so that it clicked once and without nerves. In the kitchen there is a 27OK lamp, the one that is warm as it should be, and a sticker on the refrigerator, Fields of Monster, VT. On Fridays, I kept a quiet half hour for myself. I put the kettle on, put the phone screen down and did not fix anything. It's funny, but it's during these pauses that the right things come up. That's when I noticed that it was dark on the stairs again. The light sensor had given up. I wrote to the chat at home. I'll replace it on the way today. Anyone at home? Hold the door. 10 minutes later, the neighbor from the first one answer, I'm here. There are also extra felt circles under the legs of the chairs. Take them away. The small economy of trust is still the best store. I haven't corresponded with my ex in a month. There are no principles. It's just that everyone has their own life. And then she sent a short message. I'll be in the city for 2 days. No dirty coffee if you want. I reread it, put down the tea, walked around the room, and caught myself in the habit of searching for the right words. He stopped. A paper clip instead of a stapler. I'll leave a field for maneuver. I can do it on Wednesday at 12. At the post office. I sent it and went to adjust the sensor. The coffee came out smooth. We stood at the steps, discussing the weather and work. She said that they had finally signed a project, but now everything revolves around other people's deadlines. I'm talking about our quiet mode in Slack and short checklists instead of epic. No reproaches, no do you remember. In the end, she said, you've become simple, in a good way. I reply, I'm training. We hugged briefly. A pause is not a failure, but error. In the evening, it began to rain, and photos of puddles in the basement poured into the chat. Super responded with his eternal working on it. I went down with a flashlight, the neighbor from above brought basins, and the woman from the third brought old towels. In half an hour, the water was localized, and a laminated sheet, before the rain was hung on the door. A checklist of 4 items and a QR code for a map of warm points nearby. It's funny, but someone circled the upcoming rains in the calendar with a green marker. It became quiet just from that sight. At work, I added the idea of a human microcopy. Instead of error 400, we now have we didn't figure out the request. Let's try it easier. Support sends statistics. Fewer complaints, more thanks. The numbers are modest, but inside, it's like a door that has stopped slamming. In onboarding for beginners, I introduced the slide what you don't need to know by Friday, the names of all managers, the release history for 5 years, and secret shortcuts. The audience exhaled, and the work became faster. As for the personal, it came by itself, not when I was looking for it. During the volunteer shift at school, a girl from the Spanish-speaking reception and I spent 2 hours putting bilingual memos how to write to a landlord without threats into folders. Her name was Talia. She joked that a normal layout and large margins for notes work better than any translator. I showed her our page layout, and she brought me paper clips in the shape of houses. So as not to staple people, she said. We laughed the same way. A week later, we went to a late screening without trailers, silent hour at a local cinema, and half the film was just silent. The silence was not a void, but a place. Meanwhile, the house lived by its own rules. We renamed the strange shelf by the elevator into the mutual aid table, screwed on the hooks, signed the boxes, screwdrivers, tape measures and levels, tape, slices, paper clips. They put up a tuck, return sheet, and a refund deadline. The most popular ones are the level and the marker. Someone had carefully written on a piece of paper, "Thank you for having it here. 3A. I don't know who it is." And that's right. A couple of weeks later, a mini-drama broke out in the house. A neighbor left an electric bike with a left battery in the hallway. He brought the FNI printout of the risks to the table, added a brief summary in Russian and Spanish, and offered to look at the labeling together. No bumps, with a paper clip. In the evening, he brought the battery. We found the UL certificate and agreed to store it inside the apartment in a metal box. There is not a single war and peace on the chat. To your benefit. I didn't see my ex anymore. Sometimes it popped up. I saw your signs at school, or a like on the photo. Lamp 2700,000 is the best upgrade of winter. And that was it. I caught a simple thought. Memory is not an anchor, but a file. You open it when you need to, close it when you sleep. With Talia, we keep up the pace of non-heroism. She left me a brush and hoodie. I gave her a copy of the key on a large paper clip. The correspondence contains short ones. I'm on shift until 20 to 10. The soup is warm. I'll take the filters. There's a lamp in the entrance tomorrow on the way. On Sundays, there is soup and half an hour of silence. Sometimes the cat is a mint yes. The cat was found, after all. The neighbor past comes to the report for exactly 2 strokes. The third is superfluous, and this is also the border. Sometimes the old what if comes over. Then I have 3 moves, tea in a thermos, a short walk to the water, and turning off Slack. I come back and hear the right sounds again. How the filter box softly rustles, how the door closer catches the door at the last centimeter, how thank you appears in the chat without emoticons. This is my happy ending for every day. To work locally, to speak briefly, to leave people there. If this continuation needs a dotted line in the margins, let it be like this. Next, in short steps. I'm at home. The doors close properly. quietly. The rest is on the elevator list. Summer came without fanfare. It's just that one day I went out in the morning and realized that the air was warm as a remnant, and not as a plan. Someone left a jar of felt mugs on the mutual aid table and sign. Put your feet on the chairs in the hall. Take them. I screwed on 4, and the creak went away as quietly as it had appeared. In the chat at home, do you feel smoke? Popped up. The Canadian smoke came. Mark and I assembled another box according to the Corsi Rosenthal scheme. For filters, a fan, duct tape man checked the build quality with the tail. I hung a sheet on the door. Keep the doors closed. We'll turn on the lights. Attached a QR code with instructions on where to buy Merv. In the afternoon, I took one box to Mr. Kim, and he turned it on, sat for a minute, and said, "It makes noise like an electric train, but it breathes better." This is exactly the kind of compliment you want to hear from the world. With Talia, we kept the don't be a hero mode. She left me a set of night duty, a brush, hoodie, earplugs. I hummed the second key on a large paper clip and said, "It's just a paper clip, not a staple." She nodded. Leave space. On Sundays, soup and half an hour of silence. On weekdays, short messages. I'm at Grandma's in the Crown. I took the filters. I'll be back at 22:05. Together, we completed a bilingual memo for tenants. How to write to a landlord without threats and with specific deadlines. There are checkboxes in the margins, and at the bottom is the phrase "thank you for doing it right when." The most frequent review. Readable. One evening, the usual thunderstorm from the chat began in the entrance. Who put a bag of garbage past the tank? Who slams the door? I came down with a marker and just glued a small beige rectangle to the table. Thank you for the door closing quietly. The next morning, there were rubber shock absorbers for the lids of dumpsters nearby. Someone silently realized where it hurt. I didn't cross paths with my ex. A couple of times, rare marks came from her. A like on the photo of the sign at the school. Cross quietly. Cross quietly. We see you. A sticker wrench on the picture with a door closer. I answered with a heart and went to cook pasta. The memory worked like a folder. Opened, looked, closed. No drama. Work has also leveled off. Our quiet mode in Slack was fixed by policy. Added the slide how to write when not to write to the onboarding. I'll take it to work tomorrow. I see I'll be back at 10 o'clock. Shall we reschedule? Support sent a curve minus complaints about disappearing at night. At the end of the week, we started a new habit. A minute of gratitude for non-heroic things. The most frequent ones are, for a normal code review, for we will discuss later without passive aggression. The team has noticeably become quieter in a good way. The issue with lithium batteries came up in the house again. The neighbor on the 5th moved the scooter from the hallway to the apartment, but was afraid that the charging would explode. We met at the table, took out the battery, read the label, and opened the FDNY guy. We bought a metal box for to through. I use it sometimes. The neighbor confessed, for the first time, I am glad that I was not scolded, but shown. I put the paperclip next to the home instruction sheet, symbolically and to the point. In August, Min started having cat things, refusing to eat, sleeping on a cool tile. I took a carrier and a "Don't be a hero" sticker on my phone so as not to Google diagnoses on the way and took her to an inexpensive clinic. The doctor said, stress and heat water, shade, patience. I wrote to Talia, Mint is under observation until the evening. Answer. I'll take it. You're the list at the pharmacy. In the evening, the cat ate exactly 3 pieces. The 4th is extra, as always. We exhaled at the same time. An HPD inspector came in the fall, according to our requests for heat last winter. A man in a sweater under a vest, a tablet, a thermometer. He looked at our where to call sheets and the when the batteries were noisy magazine. Nodded. You can see where to speed up. A week later, Super Miguel changed the air pump on the riser, and the batteries sounded like a long-distance train, not like a drum solo. Someone left cookies in a bag and a note on the table, for silence. 3C. This is our new unit of measurement of gratitude. A cookie. At the school, our sign appeared at the intersection, the bilingual one. We see you. Cross over calmly. I walked through on purpose in the evening. My mother and 2 children crossed slowly. The guard at the entrance waved his hand at me, as if he and I had come up with it together. I went further, and the inside felt like a good door closer, without clicking, but with closing. With Talia, we had our first schedule glitch. I suggested movies, dumplings, nothing, and she had an overnight appointment for vaccinations at the clinic. I felt the old lump. I want you, but but you don't, and caught myself by the sleeve. He wrote according to our memo. How am I? I miss you what I want. Time together what I suggest. Breakfast and silence tomorrow. She replied 5 minutes later. I see everything. Tomorrow yes. In the morning, I was frying pancakes. She was silently warming her hands on a mug. Sometimes love is a heated mug. The initiative's small victories of the week appear in the house. We just hung up the sheet and added. Lubricated the hinges on the trash can. Changed the lamp on the stairs. It doesn't blink anymore. Arrow on the filter. To the fan thanks. To be. Someone added top up the salt by November. I rewrote it in big letters and put it at the bottom. Advance is not a weakness. We finally made it to the water together. Briefly and without heroism. To the Rockaway. On the train. On a weekday, we sat on the sand with bags of chips, were silent, watched the surfers fall and immediately get up. Talia said, I like that you're not trying to have a perfect day. I reply, I like that we have enough. We returned without souvenirs and without fatigue. One Tuesday, I saw my ex again, in line for coffee at Caxp, and she flashed by like a familiar headline. We exchanged hey and okay palms and parted ways. No bitterness, no what if. I found myself wondering not what to tell her, but did I buy filters for the neighbor's grandmother? It seems that this is growing up in my performance. In winter, as usual, we were dusted. By this time, there was already a bucket of salt on the table with the inscription take, return, to flashlights, a list of who will move cars in the morning, and spare earplugs in a bag. The library around the corner has given the children's room a warm zone. We brought an extension cord, tea, and a sign saying sit down, charge it up, exhale. A couple of people just sat there and left. That's enough. One of the best scenes of the season is how pensioner L, from 5A, the one who had previously torn down the ads, brought the sheet himself. If the elevator is up, call me. I know how to get through. On the instructions at home there was a line elevator, L, 5A with a neat number. I took a picture and caught a strange show, when you are not holding alone, but together. At the end of the year, Talia and I sat down and didn't say forever. We just opened the general calendar and added filters, January, July salt, November lamps on the stairs, every 6 months silent screening in our cinema, once a month suit band silence, every Sunday. She put her hand on mine and said, it's easy for me. I reply, I feel comfortable. Mint gave out to Pats at that moment. The third, as usual, was superfluous. Sometimes I think I could tell you about life in a more storyline way, but my story is how smoothly the filter rustles at night, how carefully the door closes, how people take a marker and sign returned, and also how we leave paper clips for each other instead of staplers, the opportunity to fix it without nailing it down. Tonight I went around the house in the usual circle. I checked the door closer at the back entrance, flipped through the small victories, glued a new arrow to the filter, left a pack of paper clips on the table. I caught movement on the stairs. The sensor worked gently, as it should. At home, there is a 2-7 OK lamp, a mug of tea, a list of things to do at the elevator for tomorrow. Call Mr. Kim about knives, bring salt to the third, write to the cinema about a quiet screening. The phone is facing down. I turned off the big light, left the small one in the hallway for those who come later, sat down on the edge of the table and said aloud to myself, habitually and calmly, I'm here. And that, oddly enough, is still enough. Tomorrow, according to the list, and in short steps.